Truth is, I am Iron Man.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
What is going on? What are you doing?
To infinity and beyond!
This is the way.
The flux capacitor.
Is Star Wars the one with the little wizard boy?
Chewie, we're home.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
Hello, fellow fans, to United We Fan, the podcast. United with me is my co-host, the radiant Bryan. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, everyone.
So radiant. We hope our fellow fans enjoyed last week's episode where we reviewed some of the DC fandom event. On this week's episode, we'll be putting 3 films each on trial. These films aren't highly reviewed, but we feel they don't deserve to be in bad movie jail. Bryan and I will put our defense attorney hats on and defend our film's heavyweights: Cowboys and Aliens, Rat Race, John Carter of Mars, Hot Rod, and Clue to hopefully get a not guilty verdict. I was very close to choosing Indiana Jones 4 as one of mine, but I'll save that for our Indiana Jones episode. But first, thank you all for uniting with us as we talk about all things fandom. United We Fan is partnered up with CKCC Radio. They have a large variety of podcasts on their channel, including the show, The Nerd Table. You can check all of us out wherever you listen to your podcasts. Fan thank yous. Shout out to you, our listeners. We started our channel, United We Fan, less than a month ago, and we recently hit 1,000 plus listens already. We are happy to be listened to by so many and at least 10 different countries. Bryan and I have so much fun uniting with you all weekly, and we thank you for tuning in to hear us fan out. In Mark and Bryan's World News, Bryan, you recently watched a huge debut on Disney+. How was Mulan?
We've talked a couple of different times about movie theaters and home releases and all that kind of stuff. I did venture out to see New Mutants last week. It was nice to get out of the house. But I watched Mulan this week in the comfort of my own home with breakfast for dinner right in front of the television, and I really enjoyed that. I know that's not something you want to hear, but I did enjoy watching a new movie at home. But regardless, Mulan for me, I'm not a giant Disney live-action remake of the animated classics. There's not many that I have really fully enjoyed. My favorite is The Lion King probably, and that's the exact same movie as the cartoon. So
mad at you. I can't believe... Is Lion King really your favorite of the remakes?
Probably.
It is my least favorite. We got to talk about this on an episode. Oh, go on. I'm so sorry. Ugh.
I'm not a big fan of the live action remakes. I enjoyed things like Beauty and the Beast, but I don't think I would have ever enjoyed them had the cartoon not existed. Regardless, Mulan is the one that ventured away from the cartoon more than any of them, and I liked it. I didn't love it. It is a little bit slow, a little bit cringeworthy at times, but there's one really, really cool cameo in the movie, and also the action's incredible. It was an enjoyable movie. I liked it.
I understand having mixed emotions on the remakes, but your favorite is The Lion King.
I don't like them, but there's 1.7 billion reasons that agree with me versus you.
Just because something makes money does not make it a good movie. I'm looking at a whole bunch of Transformers and Fast and Furious movies when I say that. But I will give you the credit for at least saying it is essentially a shot-for-shot technology remake.
Mulan was enjoyable. It's less like the cartoon than any of the live-action remakes before. They did a good job of separating it from there, and that's some people's issue with it. Mushu was missing. I really wanted to hear Make a Man Out of You, but it just wasn't there.
I'm glad they went for something different. I know I'm excited to watch it whenever I watch it. Mark's news. I recently marathoned the first 2 seasons of Cobra Kai. Hiya! It's on Netflix. I'm so glad it moved there. I didn't expect to marathon it, but I got it knocked out in 2 days just because I kind of ran out of time. But it is amazing. I love every part of it. For all those How I Met Your Mother fans, we all know how much Barney Stinson loves Cobra Kai.
When you watch The Karate Kid, you actually root for that mean blonde boy?
No. I root for the scrawny loser from New Jersey who barely even knows karate. When I watch The Karate Kid, I root for the Karate Kid, Johnny Lawrence from the Cobra Kai Dojo.
If this show was influenced by anyone, Barney Stinson had a little influence on this show. Bryan, last we talked, you did season 1. Have you finished the show yet?
No, I have not finished season 2 yet. I watched season 1 as it premiered on YouTube Red. I'm excited for season 3, get the Netflix money behind that show. I'm glad people are starting to really learn about that show, but I have not yet watched season 2. I've still got to catch up there. I've been actually on a new show called Kim's Convenience, which is also on Netflix, which is on the same channel that Schitt's Creek was on. That show's really funny as well, but I've been stuck on that.
Cobra Kai, definitely enjoyed the first season. Second season, there's a lot of teen romance angst that kind of made me squirm a little bit, but other than that, it's all good. Bryan, you recently went to the movies and you said you saw New Mutants. I also recently went and saw Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Excellent!
It was a most excellent and non-bogus adventure. I liked it a lot. My only cringe is the actress who's playing Keanu Reeves' daughter decided to kind of try to be Keanu Reeves. She did her own thing, clearly inspired by her dad, Ted, but Keanu Reeves' daughter tried to be him and it just threw me off. But other than that, go see this movie. It's a lot of fun. Bryan, I know you're excited. The force is strong with us around Halloween, is it not?
I've had my mobile alerts on Twitter set up for months and months and months for a Mandalorian season 2 announcement, and we kind of got an announcement. I mean, we got an announcement. We got a new poster, and
Yeah.
Mandalorian season 2 will premiere on Disney Plus. Disney said it was going to be in October. I was a little bit disappointed. They went with the 5th of 5 Fridays in October, but regardless, we're going to get it on October 30th. So right around Halloween is when season 2 of The Mandalorian will start. That's going to run for 8 episodes, so that'll take us all the way up almost till Christmas.
This is the way.
I'm excited for it. If you have not seen The Mandalorian, I don't know what you're waiting for. Emmy nominated for Best Drama, and rightfully so.
I have spoken.
I don't have a poll just for you yet, but I will have one next week to find out everyone's favorite 2000s movie. Bryan, your recent Mount Rushmore, you asked what was everyone's favorite football movie, and
My number one, clear and away, is Remember the Titans. I love Remember the Titans. That's my number one favorite football movie. The rest of my final 4 on my Mount Rushmore, Jerry Maguire.
Jerry, do you know the human head weighs 8 pounds?
I love the kid in that movie. He's my favorite. Varsity Blues, I will admit, have not seen in a little while, but I remember really, really liking that movie, especially as a teenager.
I don't want your life.
And then Friday Night Lights, I was obsessed with that movie when I played high school football, so Friday Night Lights was my 4th one.
all good choices, all good choices. I didn't even think about Jerry Maguire until I saw your post, and I thought to myself, wait, is that a football movie? Wait, is Moneyball a baseball movie? Yeah, Moneyball is about a GM of a baseball team. Jerry Maguire is about a sports agent, but his only client's a football player, so it's talking about, okay, yeah, I'll go with it. So Jerry Maguire made my Mount Rushmore.
Show me the money!
Followed by Rudy. Varsity Blues also made mine. And then a last minute, just making it, it replaced another movie, The Replacements.
So you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you here, but that sad look up on your face.
I did give honorable mention to Necessary Roughness and Little Giants.
Little Giants is so funny. I really, really like that movie. That probably, if in all reality, it probably is my number 4 over Varsity Blues. But Little Giants, I love that movie so much.
And if you haven't heard of Necessary Roughness, think the baseball movies Major League. Think of the football version of that. It has Sinbad, Scott Balka in it. Rob Schneider has a small role in it. It's a lot of fun about a college football team. Bryan, I know you were blown away that I didn't have Remember the Titans on my list.
I just don't understand how you left Remember the Titans off that list.
So Remember the Titans for me, if we are talking about Mark who just saw the movies, I would say, yes, I love Remember the Titans. But then me being the history nerd, I looked into it and they definitely stretched some things about some of the real life people it focuses on. And I think that just kind of jaded me a little bit. And then just actions that real life person did. So it's a solid film. I will be happy to watch it. Is in my top 10. Absolutely. Varsity Blues, though, thank you for bringing that one up because I would have forgotten that one. And I feel like if we did watch it again, we'd be like, oh man, so dated, but whatever. It's fun. Well, now it's time to enter the courtroom.
Now do the theme to the People's Court.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me explain this process fully. Bryan and I picked 3 movies that we feel are underrated and are wrongfully in bad movie jail. We will be the defense attorneys for our films as we try to keep them out of bad movie jail. The other person will introduce evidence to show you why it's in bad movie jail, and hopefully they won't sway you. Bryan, I turn the courtroom over to you. Your first movie, Rat Race.
So Rat Race is a movie that I remember how much they spent on the marketing for this movie. It was everywhere for a really long time. This movie has stars from Amy Smart, who was the sweetheart of America back in 2001 when this movie came out. Whoopi Goldberg, Seth Green, Cuba Gooding Jr. when we talk about the sweethearts of the late 90s, early 2000s. My favorite cameo in this movie comes from Gloria Allred as the zealous attorney, always seeing everything going wrong, being her Gloria Allred character. We have John Lovitz. We have all kinds of people in this one. Rowan Atkinson as Enrico Pollini, the Italian tourist. He's my personal favorite. And John Cleese. I love John Cleese in this movie so much. But the premise of the movie is you have 6 teams of people who were all in Vegas at the same time for various reasons. And John Cleese is the eccentric billionaire that plays a gambling game with all of his rich friends.
You just can't pick people at random. I can do anything I like. I'm eccentric.
Puts $2 million in a locker in the middle of New Mexico and tells these 6 people to rush to get it while the eccentric billionaires bet on who's going to win first. That's the entire premise of the movie. The running joke throughout the movie is when you cut to the millionaires and they're betting on, and you have like housekeepers from the hotel like hanging from curtain rods, and they just drop down one by one, and they're all betting and rooting for their favorite maid to hold on the longest. That entire running joke always cracks me up. But Mark, there is a bus full of ladies that I think would have really enjoyed our episode about our comedy TV show characters. A bus full of Lucille Balls.
Our next stop is the 3rd annual I Love Lucy convention in Santa Fe, New Mexico. What do you say?
I don't know how I forgot this scene, and when it came on, I want you to know I sat up and like locked back into this movie. It made me so happy.
Yeah, that bus full of Lucille Balls when Cuba Gooding Jr. has to drive it down. The entire premise of this movie is it just keeps getting crazier and crazier. A cow getting tied up by a hot air balloon and then flying through the air. And of my 3 movies that are in bad movie jail, this is one that I think I'm going to have the hardest time getting out of there.
Rat Race, I hadn't watched it in a while. It made me laugh. I laughed out loud. Rowan Atkins, I think that man is hilarious. He definitely played something very inspired by his character of Bean.
He's a race. He's a race. I'm winning. I'm winning.
Breckenmeyer, speaking of 2001, he was up and coming. He was going to be the next like huge comedic actor, and then I feel bad. I don't know what happened to him. Rat Race is enjoyable. I think it's definitely dated. Nowadays, they would have to like rewrite some of the jokes. I know the critics overall give it a 44%. Audience reviews, though, this is a good sign. Audience gave it 64%, so it went up in the audience eyes. IMDb, 6.4, so it's above average. Here are 2 of my favorite reviews of this movie from critics. A few decent running gags and an ocean of bad ones. That one just hurts there at the end there.
I don't know if I would call it unfair, though. That might be true.
I feel like their philosophy was, we're going to throw 100 jokes at you and hope at least like 40 of them land. And then, Bryan, be ready for this review. Rat Race is like being locked in a car trunk for 2 hours with a marching band playing the collective hits of Spike Jones. I don't personally know what that means, but it seems really thought out, and I'm so sorry you had that experience. I definitely appreciate the scene where John Lovitz steals a car from a very predominant historical figure. Only John Lovitz and maybe 1 or 2 other comedians could definitely get away with it. And then the museum he accidentally brings his family to. The joke is a very hard one to pull off, but John Lovitz found a way to make it funny.
Yeah, it shows just the ludicrous nature of this entire movie. Like, it's just trying to one-up itself the whole time. I will say, if you want to know how dated this movie is, it ends with a gigantic concert run by Smash Mouth. I don't think Smash Mouth has played in front of a crowd that big in a long time.
I thought the same thing when I was like, wow, this movie is dated and they are singing All-Star. Good for them.
All right, Mark, let's move on. I think we probably still sentenced Rat Race to Bad Movie Jail with a few enjoyable times in it. But let's move on to your first defense. We're going to talk about Cowboys and Aliens from the beloved Jon Favreau. It does have a 44% from critics and actually only 43% from audiences. My favorite thing that was summed up, it said, yes, cowboys punching aliens in the face can be funny, but it doesn't make this silly endeavor worthwhile. So, Mark, how do you defend Cowboys and Aliens?
How do I defend this film? I will be honest with you. I remember watching the preview when it came out in theaters, and everyone laughed when that title came on the big screen. How do you take a movie seriously called Cowboys and Aliens? Here's how. You get Iron Man director to direct this, Jon Favreau. You get the film to be produced by Oscar winners Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard. You have a writing team of Oscar and Emmy nominated writers write it. And then you get James Bond himself, Daniel Craig.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
And Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, to co-star in it.
That's his name. Henry Jones Jr. Like Indiana. We named the dog Indiana.
He's Han Solo.
Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon.
I'm sorry, Brian. I can't hear you. Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, that's correct. To star in this movie with James Bond. And that's how you get people to try and take this movie seriously. It's about a spaceship arrives in Arizona in 1873 to take over the Earth. And then you get cowboys and Native Americans standing together to take on the aliens so that they don't take over the world. I liked it because it's an original idea. It's not a quote-unquote current or modern times alien invasion movie. It goes back in time, when we're riding on horses and we have 6 shooters. So I liked that aspect of it. There's an extended edition. So people are going to be like, wait a minute, why do I want to watch more of this movie when critics give it a 44% and audience only 43%? On IMDb, it's got a 6, so it's above average. Check out the extended edition. I think it's definitely one of these films where those 17 extra minutes help the story develop a lot more. Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford, they take this movie seriously. They don't just mail it in. You could just tell they really cared about it. And I think also the production value is there.
But what do you say to Brent McKnight on Rotten Tomatoes when he said it commits the one cardinal sin that a movie of such a ridiculous concept cannot commit? It's boring.
Okay, if you don't like Westerns, you're going to think it's boring because it is a sci-fi Western. So if it's boring to you, then I guess action and alien invasions is a boring topic for you. And I hope you find one more entertaining. Rounding out the cast, besides James Bond and Indiana Jones, you have Paul Dano, who's going to be the new Riddler in The Batman. You also have Clancy Brown. Now, this Clancy Brown, either Highlander fans will recognize that name, Starship Troopers may recognize that name, or SpongeBob fans might recognize his voice as Mr. Krabs. So Sam Rockwell is also in it. And then you also have Olivia Wilde, who's going to be, rumor has it, directing a new female Spider movie for Sony Pictures. I'm excited for that. I doubt I've convinced you, but what I will say is go into this with an open mind. I read to you, you have Jon Favreau, who we trusted with Iron Man and other Marvel movies, as well as the legendary Steven Spielberg. So go into it. It has a great creative team. Help me get this one out of bad movie jail.
Not everybody has been 100% for me. I will allow this out of bad movie jail with 2 ankle monitors, I think. I trust everything Jon Favreau does from here. I hope he becomes the new president of Lucasfilm. I love The Mandalorian, and he's right behind that too. So I think 2 ankle monitors, but I will let it out of bad movie jail.
Honestly, if you're a fan of Transformers, Pirates of the Caribbean action adventure, I don't get how you wouldn't like this movie. There's a lot of adventure and fun. Brian, our next case is the Disney, I don't know if I'll use the word live action kid classic, but heavyweights. Brian, this film didn't pull its weight. And Anyways, didn't pull its weight with critics with a 29%, but it did go the distance with audience who gave it a 77%. And on IMDb, they rated it 6.7. Why do you feel like this one is wrongfully imprisoned?
I will convince you to like Heavyweights if you do one thing for me, and that is view Heavyweights as a prequel to Dodgeball. If you take Ben Stiller's character as Tony Perkis and then you imagine him becoming White Goodman in Dodgeball,
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody!
that completely changes Heavyweights for me. Fat shaming's not a good thing. Fat shaming's never been a good thing.
Right.
They do treat it in a fun manner. It's really over the top for me of all the good kids at sports. The fact that you have an adult that runs a camp that drives kids on a boat over to vandalize a whole nother camp, like stuff of that just doesn't really work for me. But even this movie's self-aware to the point where when Tony Perkis gets out of his electrified prison later in the movie and he says, I think the villain was a little over the top. And then he proceeds to be even more over the top and he does a bunch of backflips and knocks himself out. I do enjoy the cameo of Jerry Stiller being the original camp owner. There's a lot about this movie that I have quoted throughout my life.
I'm feeling skinny, Tony.
I've quoted this movie a lot throughout my life. This movie is really, really funny.
Bryan, I don't know how you can talk about this movie without talking about the body system.
Oh, don't worry, I have them on the body system.
Body system?
Yeah, have a look. Body! Body! Body!
I definitely, whenever we have to partner up with someone, I'm like, oh, we can just use the buddy system. Buddy! Buddy! I agree with you. The topic is about plump kids at what they identify themselves as fat camp. So there's so many ways they could have, this could have gone wrong, but I think they did it in a supportive, lighthearted way, which was good for them. You have some familiar kid faces that you'll recognize, like Kenan Thompson. He's in it, as well as Goldberg. It's got a fun cast where I think you'll see faces going, oh, I know that face. It doesn't help that it's the worst critic rating out of our 6 movies. But like I said, the audience gave it 6.7 on IMDb, and people are harsh on there. It's co-written by Judd Apatow, who did 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, so many brilliant comedies, even like Freaks and Geeks. But one thing against it, it's the same director who did Little Nicky, the Adam Sandler movie. So that's not really a strong point for it. But Bryan, what do you say to this critic who thinks it definitely deserved to be in bad movie jail? This is one of the most disgusting and stupid films I've ever seen. The jokes were so lame. Really? Do people still laugh at fart jokes? And Bryan, you know what? Let me take this one. To answer your question, sir, yes, people still laugh at fart jokes. Bryan, I turn it over to you.
Fart jokes exist for the 8-year-old and the fathers of the 8-year-olds. Did you notice, Mark, that the main kid in the movie, Jerry, looks exactly like Pat, the main guy from the camp? He could easily be his father.
I always thought that, yes.
But Jeffrey Tambor as his actual father also works for me. But I always wanted to make my go-kart fly in a similar manner. I don't think that that's possible, unfortunately.
Attention campers, lunch has been canceled today due to lack of hustle. Deal with it.
So did I successfully get us out of bad movie jail?
You know what? This one was never in bad movie jail for me. So there's no probation or anything. I apologize for you being wrongfully convicted. You are free to make people laugh and to make as many fart jokes as you want.
All right, we're going to move on now. John Carter has been called to the stand. John Carter from Mars. 52% from a critic standpoint. 60% of the audience likes it. But Paul Denby of The New Yorker simply titled it a mess. And Brian D. Johnson from Maclean's Magazine said, unless you're still looking forward to puberty, you should avoid John Carter.
I really don't know what to make of that. So I'm just going to move on. As you saw, luckily, audience members found it more entertaining than critics. On IMDb, it's got a 6.6, which is close to a 7, so definitely above average. I think for all of those fans out there who enjoy the action-adventure of Pirates of the Caribbean, as well as maybe the off-world planet adventures of Star Trek, I think John Carter of Mars is definitely for you. Taylor Kitsch plays John Carter, the title character. You all may recognize him from Wolverine or 21 Bridges or the really bad Battleship movie. I wish this could have been a franchise for him. And then you also have Willem Dafoe. Does anyone else think of How I Met Your Mother when you say Willem Dafoe?
Funny thing about Willem Dafoe, his name kind of sounds like a frog talking to a parrot. Willem Dafoe!
You also have Mark Strong in this, and you could tell maybe this was his audition film for Sinestro for the, I'm going to say it, underrated Green Lantern movie. You also have in the film Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad and Malcolm in the Middle. Bryan Cranston.
Say my name.
It's directed by Andrew Stanton, who did Wall-E and Finding Nemo. So you hear all these names and you go, man, this movie has to be good. It's based on a very old sci-fi book trilogy from Edgar Rice Burroughs. The book is called The Princess of Mars. I recommend it. I read it. I will admit I've only read the first one. I have to get to the rest. Overall, the film is full of action. It has story. It definitely tries to give a deep story for Mr. Taylor that makes you just see his pain and why he's hurting so much. Is the concept too original? You have a guy coming to a world where there's battle going on and he's there to save it. Yes, you can think of maybe a hint of Avatar and other such films. I definitely wouldn't say it's just another version of Avatar or anything like that, but there's parts that will remind you of it. I say if you're looking for a great sci-fi action that should have been the start of a franchise, check it out. Would it have been better maybe if it was a Netflix series? I don't think so. I think they gave the film enough depth and attention. You didn't really need it. Would I watch it? Heck yeah. I'm also going to give a shout out to the music composer from Michael Giacchino. Great job with it. Of course, he did the scores for the Star Trek trilogy.
I think my biggest issue with this movie is summed up by this final review I want to read. It says the reported $250 million price tag for John Carter. We could argue that masterpieces have no price. Then again, John Carter is not exactly a masterpiece. So I think that that's fair. It did make money to at least break even. I've been to some of the spots where they filmed it out in Moab, Utah. It looks a lot like Mars out there. So that was really cool. There's really good CGI shots in this movie. There really is some really good CGI stuff. I think the story struggled. The Civil War background worked pretty well, but overall, the story just didn't come together for me. But when you talk about from an action standpoint and from a special effects standpoint, if that's what you like, then this definitely is a movie for you to watch.
Agreed. I definitely think it's worth the watch. Now, the original title was John Carter of Mars, and I keep calling it that because I think that title is great. Disney said, ooh, movies with the name Mars in it don't sell. We're looking at you, Mission to Mars, and Mars Needs Moms, Mars Attacks. So they shortened it to just John Carter, which I don't think helps sells it at all. Like if it was a historical movie, sure, but John Carter of Mars just sounds so much more epic.
Virginia! No. My name is John Carter. I'm from Virginia. Virginia.
From a budget point of view, you can definitely see where they spent the money on the visual effects, the cinematography, the battle scenes. It's there on screen. I would have been nervous to spend that much, but I'm glad they did. It pays off greatly. I know when it first came out, a lot of people compared it to Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, how it made it feel with the planet battles and all that. I don't agree with that comparison. I am someone who has a lot of fun with Episode 2, but I don't really get that comparison. I hope you all can find it in your heart. It is streaming on Disney+. Go in there, check it out, looking for a sci-fi, very epic adventure movie, and help this movie get out of bad movie jail. Moving on, your next court case is Hot Rod. Critics, well, they weren't too fond of it, only giving it a 39%. The audience They liked it a lot more, though. They gave it a 64%. It even has a 6.7 on IMDb. I have one critic who described it as this: the film's low-key Wayne's World vibe takes it only so far. I laughed, then I wished it was funnier. Then I just wished it would end.
My thoughts are, if you don't think this movie is funny, then you haven't thought a lot is funny in the last 15 years, 13 years since this movie came out. The cast of Danny McBride, Bill Hader, Andy Samberg, just this entire movie, Isla Fisher. I have a gigantic crush on Isla Fisher, so that's part of it too. But overall, just I think Bill Hader is one of the funniest people in the world. He cracks me up. And Andy Samberg, there's nothing that he's in that I will at least not watch. This movie was originally written to star Will Ferrell. And if you know that and you watch the movie, you can kind of see, okay, I could definitely see this being a Will Ferrell type comedy. He did serve as a producer on the movie. It's just such a funny movie. There's this like Rat Race throws out 100 jokes and only 40-50% land. 98% of the jokes in Hot Rod absolutely landed with me, from the whiskey scene.
My safe word will be whiskey.
Sorry, Rod, what was that?
Whiskey.
So you mean whiskey?
What?
You're saying it weird.
Saying what weird?
All of it.
Where do you get off?
I just don't get why you're saying it that way.
Why I'm saying what way?
Forget it.
I will forget it.
And the part, Mark, I know you're like me, where Kevin and Rod are apologizing to each other, and then we get a 30-second song of Cool Beans.
That bit still makes me laugh. Is it a smart joke at all? No, not at all. It's a stupid joke, but I laugh every time, so it does its job.
John Farnham's song of You're the Voice, that entire thing, and then the riot falls afterwards, like that entire scene with the bagpipes and the people singing in the street. Just all of that is so funny.
You're the Voice. I tell you what, you put that on, you're going to walk very tall and proud. And like, I know this doesn't sound bad. I'm sad that it's in such a small movie, because I feel like that could have been such a big song for motivational.
When Rico presents him with the new dirt bike at the end to perform his jump, and then he goes,
"And I got you this rock to represent all my hard work."
All that is really funny, but I really like Kevin, and when Rod's going into the basement to fight Frank at the end, and they're like, "And may your hammer be mighty." Just all of that, and calling on the spirit animals, just everything in this movie really, really makes me laugh. I love this movie.
Andy Samberg, when I first saw the movie, I thought he was funny, and then I got kind of irritated with him. I didn't, I feel like I'm laughing that I'm going to apologize. I'm so sorry, Andy, that I got irritated by you. But then over time, I gave the movie more chances. I was like, okay, this movie is definitely still funny. As you said, Danny McBride, he's hilarious in it. The film reminds me of when you said the Will Ferrell thing. I laughed because I think for anyone who's a fan of Talladega Nights especially will think this movie's hilarious. You may even think of Napoleon Dynamite a little bit when you watch this movie. I think it's funny. I think it's low budget. It goes for low, cheap tricks and jokes. I'm actually kind of upset that it's in bad movie jail. But let's see. We got a review over here. Maybe he can shine a light on why it's in bad movie jail. If you're looking for plausibility, this is not your movie. If you're looking for laughs, this is not your movie. If you like seeing delusional, overgrown adolescents fall down a lot, then this is one for you. I say to that, sir, you just kind of described what could be a very funny time, and it was a very funny time.
When I say this movie throws out 100 jokes and 98 of them land, the only two that don't land with me both involve Will Arnett. He's too much in this movie for me. When she runs away from him and he just shouts babe for 15 seconds, that one doesn't work for me. But I don't really love Will Arnett in this movie. He's grown on me in the last few years, especially as Lego Batman, but I've never really been a giant fan of his. But overall, there's nothing in this movie that I would change. This movie cracks me up every single time I watch it. And if it makes my wife laugh, it's at least doing something right.
The fights between Ian McShane, who's a very talented actor and has so much fun with this. The fights between him and Andy, each one is hilarious and just is full of great slapstick comedy. Will Arnett, I think he's funny, but unfortunately in this one, he's just playing Will Arnett, so he didn't do too much creativeness in it. And I agree when she's walking away as La Fisher and he's trying to make it funny, you see that he's trying so hard, but the joke just goes flat very quickly.
I think the best way you summed it up is a bigger budget, not a big budget, but a bigger budget and funnier people, Napoleon Dynamite, which, as I've said before, Napoleon Dynamite is hilarious. And the critic reviews on Napoleon Dynamite are good. So, all right, we're going to move on to our final movie in movie court. And we're going to talk about a fairly well-rated review once we started looking into it, Mark. We thought it had a worse reputation than in reality it does. But we're going to talk about 1985's movie Clue.
We're trying to find out who killed him and where and with what. There's no need to shout. I'm not shouting.
It was described as easily one of the most gimmicky films of all time. And you can leave it with one conviction: stick with the game. So this was built off of the board game Clue. But Mark, I don't call it gimmicky. But what say you?
I don't understand that review at all. I mean, let's face it. Somebody actually seriously suggested, hey, let's do a movie based on a board game. Okay, sure. And they actually made it work. I think this film, it's directed by a British comedy legend. He did it, and it comes off such like a British comedy. And I think it would have been a perfect play. They actually adapted into a musical. I've seen it. I even like the musical.
I am your singing telegram.
The movie itself, critics, 65%. So it's not bad. It actually is a fresh rating. Audiences, 86%. So high. IMDb is 7.3. So why am I doing this movie? Why do I want to keep it out of bad movie jail? I think 65% from critics is criminally low. I think 86% from audience is too low. I think this is one of the best written and handled comedies.
So how did you know Colonel Mustard works in Washington? Is he one of your clients?
Certainly not.
I was asking Miss Scarlett.
Well, you tell him it's not true.
It's not true.
Is that true?
No, it's not true.
Ha-ha, so it is true.
A double negative. Double negative? You mean you have photographs?
That sounds like a confession to me. In fact, the double negative has led to proof positive. I'm afraid you gave yourself away.
Are you trying to make me look stupid in front of the other guests?
Don't need any help from me, sir.
That's right.
You have such a great cast of characters, from Tim Curry as Wadsworth the butler, Madeline Kahn, the always hilarious Madeline Kahn, Christopher Lloyd, we all know Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future, Michael McKean from This Is, Spinal Tap, Martin Mull, Colonel Mustard, Lindsay Ann Warren as Miss Scarlett, Yvette Collenkamp. I love her as the maid just because it's a one joke role that she makes so many jokes out of. And then, of course, Eileen Brennan as Mrs. Peacock. Just everyone does their part, and everyone does their part so well. John Landis from American Werewolf in London, Animal House, he did the story for it. He was undirected, which I'm glad he didn't, and he even admitted he wasn't the right choice for it. But if you want to see a smartly written comedy that has twist endings, it has 3 different endings. The film said, we're going to keep it fresh. Depending on what theater you're in, you're going to get a different ending. And I'm definitely that guy who, when he watches it at home, he selects the one where you can pick all 3 endings, and I have so much fun. I remember the first time I watched it, I didn't know you could watch all 3 endings, and it just showed one ending, and then the credits rolled. I said to myself, wait, what? That's not right. I hope you all find a way to give this one a higher review. This is seriously one of the funniest comedies that has a whole lot of lines that you'll remember and quote so often, and I think that's the quality of a good comedy.
You see, it's like the Mantis. We always get our man.
Mrs. Peacock was a man?
I will say the thing that puts this really down for me is the 3 different endings. I think the idea of it is cool. I don't know. Like, I think there should be a better one ending for a film. I don't think I want to go to a movie theater and have a different experience than somebody else, especially if they got the ending I wanted versus the ending others wanted. Now I'm sounding exactly like a Game of Thrones fan all over again, but yeah. I love the idea of alternate endings on a DVD, but to actually put out different endings across different movie theaters, that doesn't really work for me.
I get that. I understand that. And I know they're working on a remake So, Brian, you may get your wish where they only have one ending for it. But I think this movie said, hey, we're going to be different. And that was one way they went different. And I think it adds to what makes it so memorable and stand out.
Tim Curry's a big part of my childhood, so that's part of the reason why I give this movie a definite pass. What are your feelings on the remake, Mark? I know that it almost seems like it's a done deal.
I'm okay with them remaking it. Now, I'm not always for remakes. You know, everyone's always like, find original ideas. I'm okay with them adapting this idea because it's based on a board game. It's wide open to adaptations. When you have the brilliant minds of Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman, those are guys who know what they're doing. They know how to make a good movie. They know how to handle a good movie. So I think it's in good hands. I'm excited for it. Now, my only thing is, I hope they don't make it like a rated R comedy where they just make it harder and edgier. I hope they keep the fun comedy aspect of the original.
We did kind of already get a remake when we got Knives Out last year.
A donut hole in a donut's hole.
I didn't know if I was the only one who thought that too with Knives Out. I kept thinking, man, I'm totally inspired by Clue.
Again, I'm with you. Never really belonged in bad movie jail. And it was kind of on the line. It was kind of in county jail. It didn't really count. Yeah. I will let it out. No parole, no nothing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we hope we presented our cases very well to you so that these films will no longer be in bad movie jail. We feel that they deserve to be seen and enjoyed without any judgment.
Tap, tap, tap. Case ended.
That concludes this episode. We thank you, fellow fans, for listening. Please give the show a rate or review wherever you listen so we can unite with more fans out there. For those listeners who want to get in touch with the show, please do so. Brian, tell our listeners how they can message the show and stay up to date on everything UWF.
You can find us on Instagram at United We Fan Podcast. Or if there's something you want to hear us talk about, shoot us an email at unitedwefan.podcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for uniting with us here on United We Fan, the podcast. And to all those listeners in 10 plus countries, hello, we appreciate you. And to everyone who's given us over 1,000 listens, we can't thank you enough. Listen to us wherever you check out your podcasts. And until we unite again, fans, here's a clue. Communism was just a red herring.
Take it easy, Mountain Face. Hospital.
Trash can.
Sweet. Thanks, buddy.